Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. I always do the pre kind of chat with people too before we get into the meat and stuff. And my friend Arwen was so just kind. And but I decided to do a new podcast because we finally sunsetted the F word. And I was like, you know what? These people are rock stars. And you were the first person when I said the word that came to my mind. It was Arwen Becker. There's a
Aw.
reason though, because I know your husband is
Yeah.
also he is a rock star, like,
He
quite literally,
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
and,
We're planning his 60th birthday, and I said, "I think we need to do a rock theme and have everybody come dressed in their best rock attire."
oh my gosh, so this was absolutely perfect, and so for those who are watching and feel free for those who are here in the live audience part of the podcast, we're gonna continue to do these every week. Arwen was gracious enough to be our inaugural guest, which I am so, so honored, and she's just a light. Everything about her is a light. She's a keynote speaker, she's an author. I did put on LinkedIn today that you're crazy because you are an athlete and there's crazy things that you do that I've never seen
Yes, an
other people do.
endurance athlete of all
You're
things.
an yes, and and we're going to talk about that a little bit too. You're a podcast guest, you're a podcast host, you're and speaking of authoring, so guess what I have right in front of me?
Yay, my new book and my
I
other book. Oh, that
the
makes me
first
so
question my
happy.
husband asked me was, "Is this Arwen?"
I
And I said,
know that
I don't
the
know if
funny
it
thing
is."
is a lot of people asked me that too, and I was like, "No, that's not me."
I did.
It
When
was
he
just
said it to me, I was like, I don't know, Daryl. I got to ask her that when we're on the podcast together. But I have to tell you a little self-serving plug for myself because the most exciting part for me too is that I'm on the back of this book.
Yes, you are. With one of my yes, because you read it and it just meant the world to me. And you know women, you know what we deal with, and you know women in the financial industry. Obviously, that's what we're going to be talking about today.
A lot of
And
that
so I'm
today.
I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're here too. And going back to the endurance athlete part, there's a lot of history about who you are and what you've done over time, which is impressive because I do know that you have done some modeling. I do know that you have done a lot of fitness modeling from what I recall in one of our chats once before. And then I followed you on Instagram. And then you started doing these crazy things and you were posting about going
Totally
up this
crazy.
mountain. And I thought, where's she going on the mountain? And then the mountain got bigger and longer and further. And I'm like, is she walking across? Like, what's going on here? Talk a little bit about some of that endurance sport, because I think that some of the topic today, I think plays into why you do what you do as well.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I never in a million years would have ever thought I would term myself an endurance athlete. And to get started as an endurance athlete at the age of 47, yeah, it just wasn't part of the plan. I'd always been involved in athletics, but it was always
Yeah.
very short things. It was sprints. It
Yeah.
was 100, 200 level, running or swimming was a 50, 100. Volleyball was very much start, stop, things of that nature. And so I never thought distance was anything I could do. And the only thing I'd ever done was 2011. A girlfriend kind of dared me to do a half marathon. So I trained for that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I can't run up more than 3 miles. And so I hadn't done anything like that. And, at the end of 2021, I was at a financial event of all things, and a guy got up on stage and was talking about this endurance race called 29 on 29. It's an event, it's not really a race. And the premise of it is you hike 29,029 vertical feet, which is the vertical equivalent of Mount Everest, and you have to accomplish it in 36 hours or less. So that's how you officially Everest. And yet, so he talked about this event, and I was like, "Oh, it sounds so compelling. I don't know why I would wanna do that," but there was something inside of me that was like, "Could I? Could I actually do it?" But then he said the date, and the date of the event was my 47th birthday. And I was just like, "I have to do it. I have to prove to myself that I'm capable of so much more than what, at this point in my life, I have done." And be willing to do something physically very, very difficult. And so that's why I committed to it. You'll, of course, get a laugh out of it, though, because he said the first 10 people, we have 10 spots secured up for this event. The first 10 advisors who run up here can get those first 10 spots. So I was number one. I was like across the room. My husband looked at me. He's like, "You're not going to do this." I'm like, "Yes, I am." It was like, it wasn't open
Uh-oh.
for discussion. I took off. I get the email at the end of the night congratulating all of us for signing up. And it said something to the effect of I was going to grow as a man. And it ended off saying, "Congratulations, brother." And so I typed him back an email and said, "Hey, my friend, did you not expect a woman to maybe sign up for it?" Which I was the only one of the 10 who have signed up for it that was a woman.
Oh my gosh.
And so it started a journey, a process, which I mean, ultimately, and I write about it a lot in my new book, She Handled a Retirement, is that I learned to truly fall in love with the process. You
Mm.
know, the process that we have of any goal, the goal is such a small component, so small in the grand scheme of things. But yet, the process of achieving it, like us selling our 23-year practice this last year, the
Yeah.
process of 23 years to get to that date is so much of the journey. And you have to get to a place where you truly love the journey, because being on a mountain
That's
for
so deep.
36 hours, for me, when I did the first one, it was 32 hours of consistent hiking. We did not sleep. You stop for food breaks and things of that nature, but hiking consistently for 32 hours, you realize 32 hours actually goes pretty quick. It's a long
Really?
weekend.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's hard in the time period, but what's really challenging is preparing 20 weeks for 36 hours. A 36-hour time period, but it takes you 20 weeks to prepare for it because that's how long the training is. And that's 5 to 6 days a week of doing something. And if you don't fall in love with the process along the way, you're going to quit. And that's the reality of it.
Mhm.
You will give up along the way if you don't learn to love getting up, having that uncomfortable sensation of doing something that's out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's rainy, it's cold, it's a long day. I would rather be sitting in my pajamas. It's all these things. I want to have a nice long cup of coffee. And yet I'm like, well, I have to go to the office. So I have to get in an hour-long hike or hills this morning.
Yeah.
Best get going at 6 a.m. And so that was really what I determined. And then just as it relates to endurance events, there is a truth. You do something like that and you get to the end of it and you're like, I can't believe I did that. That was a rush. That was crazy. I think I want to do it
We'll do it
again.
again.
So I'm now done it 3 times. I've already run 2 half marathons this year. I did an ultra marathon this year. That's 31 miles. And I've already signed up for 2 mountains this year, or this coming, well, I guess 2024. So in August and September, I'm going to be hiking the same thing. So yeah, it's been crazy, really crazy.
We need crazy people though. I mean, I hope you hear that in the right light, because it's people
Yeah.
like sitting back watching and going, "That's amazing. Can I do that? Can I be that? Can I do that?" I think those are the things that, and I love, so there's so much unpackage in what you just said there, because it's the joy is the journey. The joy is the journey. I mean, the end result is, because when it ends, and then you look
Yep.
back and you go, wow, I just did that thing, right? But
Right.
really, it's the 6 hours a day, or the 10 hours a day, or the weekends you gave up. It's the decisions you made to make this a priority. And I liken a lot of what you said, truthfully, to how these came out. Because in order for us to get to where we want to be, we got to do that work.
Yeah.
You got to do that
Right.
work. And this is what you talk a lot about that in both of your books. You
Right.
got to do the
Because it
work.
is the truth. That's what it all comes down to. I
Mm,
mean, nothing in life is going to happen if you leave it to somebody else to do it. You and I have talked about it. The podcast that you did with me was titled "Man is Not a Financial Plan."
yeah.
That was a title
Most
of,
valuable lesson I ever learned in my life.
right. And me too. I had to learn it. I learned it the hard way, just like you did. And and really so much of my platform and the
Mm,
what I want to communicate to people when I'm talking to them is just a very simple premise that nobody else is responsible for your life but you. It doesn't matter if you're married, doesn't matter if you have a business partner. I look at all the things that have gone on throughout my life now, my 48 years, and I look at the times and where I waited for somebody else to do it. I waited for in hopes that the uncomfortable feeling or the anxiety of pushing something forward when I didn't have other people supporting me. And I think about how much time I wasted because I expected somebody else to go, "Oh, yeah, this is absolutely what you should be doing. And you're not going to get any resistance and just keep moving forward." None of that happened.
Yeah.
There was resistance all along the way. I felt anxious so much of the time, even when I was doing what I know I was being called forth to do.
Hmm.
It didn't take away the anxiety. It didn't take away the difficulty.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I have to stand on my 2 feet, whether that's my financial security that I have, whether that's my physical body that I have, whether that is the relationships that I have with my kids and my kids now getting married and my,
Hmm.
new daughter-in-law. That's still, I have to wake up in the morning and look at myself and go, "What have you done, Arwen?"
Hmm.
You can't think of complaining
Woo.
that you don't have that relationship or you don't have what it is that you want in that area when you haven't done the work. And that is the biggest lesson that I have learned, and it really came out in my second book, because I likened back to a relationship of my powerlifting, my
Yeah.
weightlifting
Yep.
coach in college,
Mhm.
and he and I have rekindled a friendship. And he just at 61 hit the world record for bench press. World
Amazing.
record, not like for age range, 1,142 pounds.
That's crazy.
And he has been
That's a
working on it
car.
since I knew him in college when he was in his 30s. And that
Mm.
is just a goal of something that he has put in 50 years in preparation. He's finally attained what he's happy with. And it's like, okay, now I'd like to not be working towards that goal. But that was something that he taught me from a very young age, that, drilling on nights and weekends, or doing the work on holidays or whatever it was in order
Yeah.
to help me achieve my goal, was ultimately, it came down to me doing the work, and nobody could take that away from me. It didn't matter if I had money or not had money. If I could go move my body or do, the things that were within my power, I still had some control over that. And
Yeah.
that skill is a skill that we all possess. It's whether or not we actually use it.
Yeah. And, I know that faith is a very big part of who you are. I want to make certain that you feel comfortably free to talk about that too, because you talk about something inside of you. And since I've known you, the day I've met you, you've been very clear about where you're headed and what you're doing, because you're so trusting in that voice. And I likened it recently. I was talking to one of our members, Nikki Clark, about um, the whisper. I think
Yeah.
I think there are whispers that we get to hear throughout life if we choose to hear it. I guess that makes sense,
Right.
because a lot of times we're so wrapped up in ourselves that we can't stop for a second and just
Right.
listen, that there's a voice. Whether, and I always say, in Gus we trust, God, universe, spirit, whatever you follow.
Yeah.
I listen to
Sure.
Gus, and I know
Yeah.
that this is a really big part of who you are. You talk
That's right.
openly and freely about that, and that's something inside of you. And so people like me who, whether starting an organization like this, which by the way, I think is really interesting. When I was thinking about you and you coming on this call today and the things that you've achieved, I think it's very easy to look at where you're at and not know where you've come to get to where you're at. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I think a lot of
Especially
times,
on social media, dear
oh
God.
Lord, I know, right? I know. And I think it's one of the reasons why I choose to use social media to talk about the, instead of just being focused on the disproportionate amount of stuff that's good in my life, I choose to very vulnerably share the 2 to 5% of my life that sometimes is kind of crappy, just so
Yeah.
people can see that I'm a real person. Like I
Right.
wake up and I have real issues too, whatever they are. Um, and you do that. Like I've seen
Yep.
you sit down and say, this was hard today. Like this was really hard. And I just appreciate so much about that about you, because it would be very easy at this point, yeah, 22 years behind you, to just
Sure.
show all the glamour part and not the hard part that leads up to the beautiful things that you are able to do, you and Randy, and now your
Yeah.
kids open and stuff. I think this is
Yeah, and that's so much about my keynote. So I'm going to be keynoting an event at the end of February at the Country Music Hall of Fame. I think it's going to be a really great venue.
it will
And
be.
it's all for financial advisors, so the professionals forum. And part of my keynote is really stripping down, very vulnerable, how I landed in the ER 2016, was ready to quit, you know, had a buyer for the practice. I was done. I mean, I was so done with the ebb and flow of the financial business, this whole issue of not being able to generate enough leads, just the the uncertainty, the feeling of not being able to pay the bills, the fact that we were still digging out of the hole created from the Great Recession. I mean, owning a financial planning firm that started right before the dot bomb, and you know, making it up to that point, the Great Recession just it was nearly our undoing. And so I just was done 2016, you know, just hands up, was like, this is it. Let's sell the practice. Let's just be done with the pressure of it. I'm going to go work for somebody else. I'm not going to work with my husband anymore. Just be done with it. And when you talk about that little, still small voice,
Yeah.
you know, I had the sublease documents all signed, had already fired half of our employees. You know, the other couple were going to be split up and disbanded. Some were going with my husband, some were going with me. It was an absolute mess. Email was sent to go, or set and ready to go to the 600 clients. And the night, or the morning of final signatures, it was Saturday morning, we went into the office with the buyer, and I went for a run. This is where I get most of my revelations, and it's my time with God. My body once my brain gets tired when I'm going out exercising, the busyness stops, because I'm
Yeah.
ADHD. It's just I have a hard time processing through things. And so a lot of times exercise and being out in the quiet and nature allows me to start to filter through things. And that morning, I very clearly heard, you know, it was that, again, like kind of in that
Yeah.
gut check.
Yeah.
But it was, Arwen, you go forward with the sale of the practice and it will end your marriage. That is what I was told. And so I showed up 2 hours later, sitting next to my husband. The buyer passed the last set of paperwork across the table for me to sign. And I just started bawling.
Mm.
And I just was like, I know on paper it makes sense, but it's not right for my family. And that one decision set forth the next phase of my career, because I was at that place of complete brokenness and just hands in the air, total surrender. I did not know what else to do. I had a panic attack the next night before I had to go back to the office, because I thought I'd sold the company. I was like, I was done. I was like, you know, kind of like deciding
Mhm.
to divorce yourself from somebody and then realizing you're gonna go back in the trenches and try and make it work. And that's where I was.
Mhm.
So panic attack, didn't think I could do it. And it was that week that I made the decision, uh, and told my husband, I said, I want to take over all the marketing. I want to start doing seminars. I want to start marketing. I don't know what that looks like. You've done it for the first 17 years, but let me do it now. And it was that choice that led in a very short period of time to us starting to market to women. And that was the biggest change. That 2.5 years from that, we doubled our company's revenue. I couldn't believe how many women in my community were completely underserved and not being spoken to, and they weren't being spoken to in a way that resonated from them, you know, with them. And we just went from 0% of our marketing to women to 80%. And that snowball effect
Wow.
in the next 7 years led us to selling the company for 20 times what I was going to sell it for in 2016. And it was that decision to listen to that voice. And I have a better marriage, better marriage that's still intact.
Yeah.
And now we're about ready to celebrate 20 years of marriage. And so, yeah, listening to that voice, but you can only get there oftentimes if you can clear out the busyness for a moment. And exercise does that for me.
Yeah.
Just being able to get out, even for a walk.
Yeah. You just got to find your space. And you know, it's interesting. You talked about having like the ADHD kind of thing, which I totally have. Totally have. You have to, I think, to run a business to some degree, you kind of be able to have to manage some of
Yeah.
that. I feel like there's a large majority of us who do. Um, but you're right. You've got to be able to quiet it enough to go, what are you trying to tell me? What does that
Right.
look like? What
Right.
am I supposed to do? And then you talk a lot about it. That for me is where you're the differentiator in that equation a lot of times, because Arwen, a lot of people don't talk about that part,
Yeah.
and women need to hear
Right.
it because
Right.
you know, I think you remember one time I did a word cloud of tell me what you've been too much of, too of anything, right? I'm too tall, I'm too pretty, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that.
Yeah.
Women have heard all these too many times, right? And when
Right.
we put it on the board and really looked at it, and we're like, wow, you start to see other people are like you, like, oh my gosh, somebody else. Interestingly enough, I listened to the men say, I had no idea you guys are told that much stuff. Like it's a learning process for them going, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, people. And I'm like, yeah, this is a totally normal for us. The thing that I also love about you is that you talked about the importance of women in wealth, having wealth, spending money, saving money, and how it's good for business. It's women are good for business. Like if you do nothing else for your
Right.
practice because it's a money number, then choose women and help them because there's so many
Right.
doing it.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? And I'm like, I I was sure after the first like year and a half of doing, completely shifting our company. We had 4
Yeah.
advisors, 3 of them were men. We had 14 total employees that included the advisors and myself. Um, and so half of our company was men. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't, wasn't like just a women only company, but we shifted 80% of our marketing dollars over that next year to marketing to women because
Yeah.
I was sure that all the success that we were having and I was promoting and I was like screaming from the mountaintops because I was just having the most amazing interactions with so many women and it was
Yeah.
just such a unique experience that we had not had in the prior 17 years of doing external marketing for our company. Just this feedback of women coming up. Oh my gosh, this is the first invitation I've ever received that said women only. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing this. Oh, this was such a breath of fresh air. Oh, thank you for a safe space for us to come and learn and talk about money. And, this whole thing, I feel encouraged. I feel uplifted. I feel like I can do this. I feel like, and you hear that enough. And you're like, wow, this is really powerful. So you want to
Mm.
keep doing more of it.
Yeah.
But what I was sure was going to happen was I was going to start to see other advisors doing it. And I still was looking back 7 years later going, how is it possible that we have completely shifted our company and this has changed everything for our business and our lives, and yet I'm still watching advisors over and over and over again go into the sea of sameness and try and do the exact same thing that everybody else is doing and not serving the largest segment of the US population and the greatest holders of financial wealth. That's only going to increase to probably 60% of US wealth in the next 10 years with that shift of the 20 of the 30 trillion dollars of
Yeah.
inheritance. Why in the world wouldn't you go and become really good at marketing to women and serving
Exactly.
your community that way? Because you no longer have to compete with everybody else. And then you also get to tap into the market that refers 3 times more than men do.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it's like a no-brainer,
It
but
really
yet
is.
people still aren't doing it.
No, they aren't. And and I say, and it's rhetorical, but it's not because I'll stand on stage a lot of times and I'll say, um, remind everyone, you do know that women are soul makers. Like all the people on the earth, we made them. We made them. So we can't be a minority when we're the majority of the soul making. We can't, but I do believe there's a seamless second, I call it, which is a diverse component where you're like an onion and the other things you have to, consider in that. And the men that we have at Feelings of Finance who are male allies and such really do recognize that a lot, and I get two types.
100%.
Yeah, I get the ones who come to us and say, I love this question when they say to me something that sounds like, I know I need to change my practice and I'd like to be able to work with you more to be able to make that happen. They're coachable. You can work with that. The
Yeah.
mindset's there, right? And then I have the ones who are already doing the work, but they want to get better at it. Okay. What I'm not going to do are the ones who start off things like, why do you people? I'm like, you're still shut
Exactly.
down. You're still shut down. And I don't have the time I'm 52 years old. I'm like, I'm on the other side of the
Yeah,
dash, most likely at this point. So I just need to work with the ones who really are starting to get it.
100%.
You are a very early adopter of that space. Speaking of which, we spoke a lot about Randy, even though he's not here. It's almost like he is. Allyship's important. It's very
Oh, it
important
is.
to where we're going with this. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you're talking about your husband who you're going, hey, we're going to change all of this about the practice. And he was like, okay, like
Right.
just put the
Well,
trust in that, to
what
some
I
degree.
saw in him, well, first of all, he's just like so many of the male advisors that
Yeah.
I train. He already had a heart for single women, divorced women, widowed
Yeah.
women. His mom battled MS from time he was very young, was wheelchair bound by the time he was 8,
Wow.
eventually paraplegic, quadriplegic, and, but yet was a woman of deep faith and didn't want to be pitied, but yet did what she could with what she had to work with. Right. And so that shaped him a lot. But the truth is there are so many men out there who have that desire, like you said, that are
Yeah.
like, I want to enter into this space. I don't want, how do I not become somebody that pushes women away or kind of comes in and comes off like creepy or whatever it is. And I always think of it the same way. So years ago, so my 2 best friends, one's Black
Yeah.
and one's Japanese Korean. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've been best friends collectively together. I mean, together as best friends for 15 years. But my African American friend, she and I have been friends for 2 decades now. And one of the conversations that we've had many times throughout our lives together is I would ask her, how can I, as a white woman, how can I be an ally? How can
Yeah.
I, and she calls it even more than an ally, becoming an associate. She says, I know you don't see things as a lot of the world around us do. I mean, because I was just like, I don't look at her as being my Black friend.
Yeah. Same.
People troll online and
Same.
say ridiculous, stupid things like that. And I'm just like, we've never
I have
seen
2
each other
children of
that way. We've
color
been
to this very day. I've never looked at either one of them and thought, oh, wait a second.
right, right, exactly. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not her token white friend. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And but that's a conversation that we've had, and she's always said the same things to me. Your life is it shows what it is that you believe, because your friends, most of your kids' friends are not white, even though we live in an area that's still predominantly white in the Kirkland, Seattle area. But that's not what I see in your household. And that's not what I see with your kids and their friends. And so I know that this is something that is just part of what's ingrained into your belief
Yeah.
system. But we still have conversation. She actually just gave me a book on how I think it's called How the Word Was Passed. She just gave it to me for Christmas, and it's about how slavery and certain things have been filtered through. I haven't read it yet, but she told me about it, and she said, we could talk about any of those things if it comes up, because of course we see things differently. We have different
Yeah.
upbringing. But back to my point, it's the same thing that I hear from a lot of men. It's like they want to be an ally. They want to be supportive. They want to further the cause. They have a mom, they have a daughter, they have a grandmother, they have women in their lives that they've seen struggle, they've seen deal with things, and they want to know how to be a better support. And my conversation is always the same. First of all, if you're even asking that question, it means you care.
Mhm.
It means you're trying
Yeah.
to do the right thing. And that is hugely commended. But then number 2, and this was the part that I had to get very clear on as I started looking at training advisors, because I had some, heads of financial companies saying, you just need to train female advisors. And I was just like, it never sat well with me,
Yeah.
because I thought, why would, if 80% of the industry is men, I need to go
Exactly.
where the soldiers are. I need to go where where I can just to put disciples into those areas and raise up people to have the skills. And if those happen to be men in those areas, why in the world, willing men, why wouldn't I train them how to best and properly market and serve women? That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. And so that's part of this process, is really understanding, it's not about browbeating, because I've seen, unfortunately, other women in this industry who make men feel bad.
Yeah.
And that's not helping the cause.
No,
I
it's
just
definitely
need
not.
willing participants.
Yeah, we're big on all gain, no shame here. We
Yeah,
want to, we think voices matter. Everyone's voice matters. But I do think that if men have been part of the problem in the past, they need to be, it's imperative that they're part of the solution. Otherwise, we're just bound to
absolutely.
repeat the problem over and over again. So hearing a lot of times too, man, you said it just earlier about they don't even realize sometimes. Sometimes it's like, I did that, or I didn't say it like that. Oh, okay. I got to learn. And
Yeah,
remembering too that many of them have been trained by other advisors. And so it's just been this trickle down. And we're
sure.
actually putting a stop in the middle of it, saying a hurdle, a stop, we need you to stop and pause for a second before you jump over this to think, hey, maybe I should say it this way, or hey, maybe I could change this. And that's where I think that people are doing their best work a lot of times versus just like you just said. Like, I'm not going to sit there and go and tell somebody, it's just not who I am either. I'm not going to go tell somebody mean things about that. It's just not me. It
Right.
doesn't feel good,
Right.
you
No.
know?
And it is a lot of it is awareness. And
Yeah.
truthfully, what I've also discovered in the last 7 years of really diving in and studying and researching and gathering data as it relates to marketing to women, I've also found that it's not intuitive for women either.
Hmm.
And the reason being is because of our industry being predominantly male. Most successful women in this industry have had to work in a masculine thread. They've had to kind of, looking at the difference between, feminine and masculine energy, which we all
Yeah.
have. But masculine energy tends to be competitive, assertive, firm, direct. All these things that I, as a woman, when I get up on stage and have to talk to a room full of men, I have to be willing to enter into that
Yeah.
space because otherwise I'm not going to be able to
I know
make the
exactly what you're talking
connection
about.
they
Yeah.
need with me. You know what I'm talking about?
Hmm.
Well, the reverse works. If you are, even as a woman, if you have had the tendency to be, or you've been successful in a masculine dominate, male dominated industry, trying to make the shift to marketing to women is challenging. And I've seen many women fail at it because, and I can tell you I'm a perfect example because I also failed when I started doing it. I just didn't quit. I had to start figuring it
Yeah.
out. But I didn't get very high appointment ratios just because I was still acting in that thread that I was used to.
Hmm.
And when I began to start really stripping down and being much more vulnerable, leading with my own failures and
Yeah.
shortcomings, and talking in a way that was much more connective and kind and vulnerable
Yeah.
and less data. Again, data isn't bad. I love data, but a lot of women that are left out of the financial conversation or they're not connecting
Yeah.
with it, they're going to completely shut down, as did I, when too much data starts to come in. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't understand it, so therefore I'm not listening to you anymore. And so we have to be mindful of that. And a lot of that is about what I talk about and train about, because we have to recognize it just has to be approached differently. It's
Yeah.
not only what we say, but more importantly, how we say it that causes the
Our
connection to
delivery.
occur. And
Yeah.
then, yeah.
Our
And
delivery.
then
It
we can
needs to be
still go
working.
through the same type of sales process and connection and, and building that relationship.
Yeah. It's I know culturally too plays a big part of this. We've learned that when I started Females in Finance, you naturally just think, oh, women will totally migrate and it'll be fine. And you've known me a few years now. And do you know I still get, and I can see some names of the people here in the audience that know me well, that I'll get on a call and I'll be talking to somebody and then I'll say, oh, let me help you get that. And they're like, why would you help me? You don't even know me. Like there's this, it's like already, I'm like, just because it's who I
Right.
am.
What are you trying to sell
I
me?
know, right? That's exactly. And the trust factor is so, we have to
Yeah.
earn that time. But culturally, even we found that as you move into learning to work with like Latinx or Black and Brown professionals and such, they're wanting to get to know you, like really know you kind of thing, right? And so maybe that first call isn't even about anything to do with business as much as about family and likes and the past and how and as it leads up to like they start releasing and saying, I can trust Arwen and tell her how I feel about this. And that
Right.
feeling is what behaviorally starts driving some of the financial decisions and lack thereof. Because I'll die on the hill that says if you're bad with $5, you're bad with 5 million bucks. The lottery's not going to save your problem. You've
Yeah.
got to get
Right.
to the root of that. But we can't get to the root of that unless we know how to work with the people, which means we have to change how we've been traditionally doing it. Because to your point, so much of the money and the wealth is going to be transferred to women. So we got to get on the bus and we got to make
Right,
this
and you
happen.
have to, just like you absolutely hit the nail on the head. You have to spend more time building rapport.
Yeah.
And truthfully, in our sales process, we don't hit the time period where you actually start asking about financials until about 25, maybe even 30 minutes into the first appointment of a 50-minute appointment. Because if more than half of women have not worked with a financial advisor,
Yeah.
they have a preconceived idea of what that's going to look like. And I liken it, and I think it's the best analogy, and you can imagine it makes men uncomfortable when I say it, but a lot of women see a new financial advisor like a brand new gynecologist,
Oh, geez.
plain and simple.
Like,
They go in too hot, too fast. They want you to financially strip down in front of
yeah,
them. And the terror and
yeah.
the fear and the shame that so many of us as
Ugh,
women have around
you're
money.
right.
I didn't do it right. I don't have enough. Somebody's going to tell me I'm bad. Somebody's going to tell
Yeah.
me I've done the wrong thing. Somebody is going to give me
I'm gonna get in
bad
trouble.
news. I'm going to get in trouble. Right, right. I'm going to feel bad
That's a
about
big one.
myself when I leave here.
Yeah.
And yet, if you enter in slow enough
Mm.
and you make sure that, again, the very beginning, the first thing that we're doing is getting to know what her perfect day is like.
Yeah.
What is it? If you can do whatever it is that you want to do, go wherever you want to go, what does that look like for you? And let her talk about it for 10, maybe even 15 minutes. Because if you think about it from a psychological perspective, if you start an appointment, after just the initial,
Yeah.
what brought you here? Why did you
Yeah.
decide to come and meet with me today? What resonated when, you heard the radio program, or you got, went to
Yeah.
our event, or whatever it was. But what the point, the component that you want to see is that when you talk about her perfect day, like the funnest thing that she wants to be doing, she is thinking about something that brings her joy
Mhm.
in your presence, in your office. It is a psychological anchor.
Mhm.
And that is the
Becomes an
point that,
experience. Yeah.
right,
Like a real
right,
experience. Yeah.
exactly, with you. And so she's thinking about that. And so getting to that point before you ever, you've kind of heard all the great things, and then can finally say, do you mind if I ask you some questions about your personal finances? And at that point, she's going to go, sure.
Yeah.
And then you're going to enter into that next part of the conversation. But we have to get there a little bit slower, especially considering a lot of women have not had that conversation with an
Yeah.
advisor before
Yeah.
at that moment.
One thing too, because I want to talk about mindset and coaching, because I think this is really important too. Little kids, you're a mother. I'm a mother. I know it's not for everybody, but it was definitely my calling. I love it. I got to tell you right now, though, I know you just had a child get married, Morgan and Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan and Morgan. Yep.
Morgan and Morgan, they got married. And it's if I could get paid to be a grandparent, I got 14 of them. I tell everybody that's the best job on the planet. They think I'm amazing. Every time they come over, they just say grandma's just the coolest. I got all the coolest stuff. It's the best feeling in the world. But little kids, when you ask them, who's your favorite teacher? And they're like, oh, Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. It's because the experience in the classroom.
Right.
They never mention, I love doing spelling tests. I
Right.
love doing the homework. I love having to get the book. No, it's the experience that person created for them that they
Right.
felt enriched in this safe, loved, valued, seen in that classroom. And when they become an adult, you can ask almost anybody today, who was your
Yep.
favorite teacher?
Right.
And I'm going to say Mrs. Jalivo. Mrs. Jalivo was my favorite teacher because when I was 6 years old, my mother died and she was my teacher. And she was so, I mean, you realize so much more of it now as an adult, but what I remember was Mrs. Jalivo every day. My dad would try to braid my hair and it was so tight. Like it was, and I'd go in the room and she'd walk over and very, very lovingly take it all out, soften the braid, put the tie back on, and then she'd push me off to go to class. She did that, friends, until fourth grade when she moved to another town.
Wow.
She wasn't even my teacher anymore, but I loved her. And she would
Yeah.
come up and she always hugged me. Remember, I didn't have a
Mhm.
mother to hug me. And
Yeah.
that, I'm not going to get emotional, but I think I am, because that experience made me feel seen. Hundreds and hundreds of children. And I could run down the hall and I'd always stop and she'd give me a little squeeze and a little on my face. And then I'd go on. She knew I wasn't getting that at home. That
Yeah.
experience is what made me love school.
Yeah.
Love it. I'll never
Compassion.
change. That's it. And you know what? She was a wonderful teacher because of that. And this is where I think when you talk about mindset and coaching, the things that you're doing now are super important to teach people. How do you channel the Mrs. Jalivo, magic so that people
Yep.
come in and they feel like Arwen sees me, and you do this very,
Yeah.
very exceptionally. Can you talk a little bit more about the mindset and the coaching, the work that you're doing there now? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the beauty of finally selling our company,
Yeah.
gave me a little bit more time to do what I know the next part of what God has called me into, which
Yeah.
is coaching. Cause I have wanted to do that. And
Yeah.
what I found is there was a lot of resistance because when you're within companies or within established, um, uh, oversight, it limits what you can do, what you can say, how you can say it, and people constantly try to direct you to do their thing. And so for me, I really felt strongly in 2019 that I needed to launch my own training company because when I was trying to do it and, like, hey, let's do this thing together, I realized that you don't want your passion project to be somebody
Yeah.
else's side hustle.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That was
Yes.
the best piece of advice that I was given. I know you
Yes.
can relate to that because it matters so deeply to you. And I mean, I put 110% into everything I do. I am an all or nothing
Yep.
type of person. That's why I do really well, one-on-one, one-on-two, but you get me in a big group setting and I struggle because I want to give you 100% of me. And actually, that was a little challenging for personal production when I was actually seeing clients on a daily basis because I would be so exhausted
You and
by
I
the
are
end
very
of the
similar this
day.
way. Yep.
Yeah. So I had to go, I don't know if that's the best for me, but lead gen, that was something that I could definitely do in speaking and connecting that way, but not being the more on the boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Um, but so for me, I was faced with this fork in the road years ago that I either launched my own training, got to do it my way, and really brought forth what I felt the industry needed,
Yeah.
or I just was keeping something that had worked so well for us in our practice to myself, and it felt so selfish to do that.
I
And
knew you
but
were going to
yet,
say that. I had a feeling. No, I'm being really
yeah,
serious right now, friends. This is how well I know this woman and what she means, and had no clue. And we did not prep. We did not prep for this call. This is live, us just talking as friends with all of you here. I actually pulled this up last night and I thought, I bet I know Arwen well enough that she is going to say this. And I was like, oh, maybe I won't say it during the call, but I am going to say it because I was flipping through something last night and this stuck out to me. And I thought, oh, that's exactly what she's going to say. I bet you dollars to donuts she's going to say this. So please bear with me because this is how crazy
the
the world,
anticipation is killing me.
well, this is how crazy the world works, honestly, Arwen, because what it was a quote. Here it is. I literally saved this on my phone last night, so I'm not making this up anybody. 10:05 last night. I'm scrolling through and this is what it says. And it is a Bible verse, but it just happened to be on Facebook. I was scrolling, I was stopped myself and I said, this is what it is. 2 Corinthians 9:6. It says, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap
Also
generously.
reap
And I
generously. Yep.
screenshot that because
Yep.
I said, I have a feeling if I know Arwen, sorry, I had to say that because I literally got
Thank you.
so
I
weird.
love
I was
that.
like,
It's such a great scripture. Well,
if you
I
hadn't
mean, it
said that,
honestly.
I was going to send it to you. I was going to text it to you. So
Well,
wow.
sowing and reaping. Well, that's the thing. I started making parallels
Yeah.
to what advisors were dealing with, and then also what I was seeing women deal
Yeah.
with in this industry, because I was having advisors coming up to me over and over and over again. This was 2018, 2019. Like, can I pick your brain? Can I pick your brain? Can I
Yeah.
pick your brain? And I'm like, I can't. I can't have my brain be picked all the time. I'm still running a company. I still have all these
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah.
I'm still doing work, right? And yet I know it was well-meaning, but I had a gentleman say to me, kind of in a prominent financial company, he said, well, I said, okay, first of all, I'm getting too many requests, DMs,
Yeah.
instant, messenger, emails, phone calls of advisors saying, I want to know how to market to women. And I was told, well, why don't you help the top advisors, XYZ, the people, AKA, that are doing well for themselves, help them, and then send all the rest of them to their marketers and their support team. And all I thought was, wait a second. So the people who are already successful, who honestly don't really want me to help them because they've kind of got a lot of things figured out, so to speak. Um, but it's the people who are being challenged to even succeed in this industry, because it is a very difficult industry. 88% of advisors quit in the first 3 years. Lack of leads, number one reason, but
Yeah.
most advisors don't succeed. And so I was like, wait a second, you want me to help those who already have and not help those who need the help?
Yeah.
And I thought, that's exactly what my industry is telling me to do with women. Oh, financially qualify the women. Don't let them come to your event. Oh gosh, that's such a drain. The non-qualified people who come to your events. And I'm like, the reason that they're non-qualified is because so much of the industry has not found a way to talk to her
That's it.
and to help her and to support her. And so what we're doing is we are perpetuating generational issues, because what I do know about women, the same thing women are inherently generous, but they cannot give what they do not have.
Yep.
Period. So if we as an industry don't support and educate in a way in which women feel welcomed to discuss it, and they feel energized and interested about talking about money, all we're doing is perpetuating the issue.
Yep.
And that's where I was like, wow, okay, I think I figured out why I have to go create my own, because I don't want to be told who I'm going to support and who I'm not going to
Yeah.
support. And the same goes for advisors who are really struggling at trying to find their space, trying to differentiate themselves, trying to enter into their communities and make a difference. And and just as I have talked very much with my best friend, my intention is, one, first, to just be able to serve women better, but to give all advisors an better understanding of the opportunity to really serve women well, but then to create a space where it's so compelling, where it shows women that becoming a financial advisor could be a very cool option for a vocation.
Yeah.
But then to be able to take it to the next level and be able to help communities that are BIPOC and that are
Yeah.
consistently marginalized,
Yeah.
why they're not going to connect a lot of times with somebody who doesn't look like they do.
That's right.
And so
To
how do
see it, be
you
it.
get that if you don't educate and give somebody the opportunity to be raised up and then be able to help educate that community?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a
It's a
very
long
real,
game, but
yeah, it is. But that's the recruitment and retention is where we're really focused at Females in Finance too. It's like that hiring and advancing component is, and mentoring, which I consider that part of recruiting too, because you have to mentor people. I think that all of it is so needed. And we're all, I hired an actuary one time, Arwen, to do the numbers, like what is it going to take for us to reverse engineer the number for retention, and there's natural attrition, like people, there's fall
sure, of
off. I mean, it
course.
happens, right? So it's for me. So I'll point to me. I have to be, in order to keep homeostasis, just everything the same, I have to be responsible for bringing someone into the profession, and they have to stay in it. That's 3 people, just to stay where we're at. No turning the boat around. That's just the boat still
Right,
cruising. If we want to
right.
turn the boat all the way around, I have to be responsible, Cheryl, for recruit 10. They get into
Wow.
it and stay,
Wow.
which means what? We have to do at least 3 to 5 times that amount of people we have to recruit, because there's going to be natural attrition that's going to happen. Women have babies, they don't come back. There's all kinds of
Sure.
reasons. Okay.
Sure.
But I started asking myself after 32 years in this profession, can I honestly say that I have put back into the profession 3 people who've stayed in it for the long haul? I don't know.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's a crazy thing to say, but I mean,
Right.
I do know some that I look at and go, I did hire that person. They're still working in it. Okay. I did hire that person and they're still working. So I do feel good about that. But to know that it's 10 per person that's already in the
Wow.
profession, now we're not doing that.
Shocking.
It
Right.
is. And who's ripe for it right now is women, people of color, because we need to see it be an environment part of what we're talking about here. So
Yep.
um I think that's critical. And this is where hiring a coach like yourself, having mindset training of the stuff that you're doing,
Yep.
having you speak at events about this and seeing the opportunity that's in front of people is so, so important. Because for
Yeah.
those who are, although we're talking about very relational work, transactionally, the numbers do work out that we need to work with women financially. We just do.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I want to add one thing too, that why so many advisors, and this is across the board, really struggle at succeeding. And this is the thing that I keep talking about the advisors that I mentor. I keep reminding them month after month about this. Stop looking at the shiny object. Stop trying to do too many things all at once, because this is the absolute plague within our industry. And it's natural because we want to go to events and we want to learn and we want to be inspired and something that's working for somebody. But one thing I can absolutely tell you without a doubt, Cheryl, and you know this, we became good at one thing. I took marketing and I put everything I had into marketing to women. And I was terrible in the beginning, but I just didn't quit. I just kept booking myself more events. I kept doing more. I kept studying. I kept practicing.
Yeah.
And I stopped allowing the next new hot, topic of inflation or social security or market risk or blah, 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 whatever it is, because it's like anything. If you divide your energy between four things, instead of just
dilutes it,
doing one thing really well, you're never going to be good at anything. You're going to be mediocre at a lot of things. And I have things that I'm very good at, and the rest of the stuff, I just don't spend time doing it.
Yeah.
But I have like my keynote. I was talking to my mentees this morning, my keynote, because I said, you need to be practicing your seminar every single week, whether you give an event or not. I have my keynote that I give was done in November of 21. I don't have a keynote scheduled until the end of February, but I still do it every single week.
Yep.
I practice it because I want to make sure that I am fully ready, because that is that's any marketing that we're doing and something that we're doing to generate revenue. And more importantly, we're putting money into it. Dear God, be good at it.
Yes.
Or work at being better at it, because otherwise you're wasting money and time. Time is more valuable than money. I cannot get back my time.
Yeah.
That I spend doing anything, just like you. I'm nearing 50. I got a year and a half to go. But I'm just like, I am not wasting my time on things that don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
I want to have it be important and spend my time and energy and have it be impactful. And I'm telling you, any advisor who gets good at a couple of things, yes, we had lots of marketing little funnels. But one thing that we were never good at, did it for 2 years, was radio. We tracked it long enough. It didn't even break even. It was just a little bit of a loss. And it was like, 2 years is enough time to say this just isn't the right space for us. And yet a lot of people just keep trying a new thing because they think the new thing is going to be what they're
I
going to
tell
be
everybody it takes
successful at.
9 months to make a baby. For goodness sake, please, please.
Honestly,
a little bit. Okay. I mean, that's 3/4 of a year. I mean, we can put time into that. I mean, there's a beautiful book called The Art of Work by Jeff Goins that when you talked about what you just said there about this, doing the seminar and repeating yourself, I had read that, and it's probably been one of the biggest game changers for me, in that I'm always ready to go, because you never know. Like, I've showed up at events and people had speakers just not show up, and they've come up to me and said, "Hey, do you have something in the hopper?" So for every person on here, always have something in the hopper ready to go.
I could be on that short list if anybody needs me.
Exactly. And so they trust that because they know that I've gone from being an apprentice to a teacher to a master. Like, there's levels, and you do repeat the process through time or whatever. But I highly encourage people to read that book too, because it'll just drive home exactly what you just talked about right there. So I know we're getting towards the end of our time now. I'm kind of curious, especially with you and the rockstar husband. What is your walkout on stage song of choice?
I would steal it from a girlfriend of mine. It's just been the best one. I love it. It's Salute by Little Mix.
Oh,
have you heard that one?
No, but now it's going on there we go. Salute by Little Mix.
Yeah. So it's something, ladies all across the world. I'm looking for recruits It's a good one. Your boots, your stilettos. I don't remember. Yeah, it's a really great one. And it's just the tempo, the beat,
Yeah.
it's for women. Yeah, it's really great.
You know that we'll
It's a really great
have
one.
definitely links for your books, definitely links to your site. If you could
Yes.
please send me where you're speaking, so we have a link to that, so people can come and join if
Okay, you got
possible,
it.
or meet up with
Absolutely.
you. I
And
just
there
have
is
to.
free training. I just want to
Oh,
let all of your listeners know.
yeah.
So I do have on my website, lifewitharwen.com or arwenbecker.com. You can get there either way.
Okay.
There is a training tab, and that has some free training
Awesome.
for advisors on how to market to women. So that is a link that they can follow, and then of course get more about the in-depth training that I do.
I love it. I love you.
Oh, I love you, Cheryl.
You
Thank you
just.
so much. You're just a power. You are just,
Mm,
I'm just so proud to know you because you're just such a powerful force for good in this industry. And you and I connected, I don't know, probably 3 years ago or
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a
Been a
bit,
minute.
right? And yet I'm just so proud to see how far you've come and
Mm,
how hard you have worked. And this
I
has
know.
been a process, and you have done the daily work because I see it, the daily work, and I saw the early on, and what you've created is truly remarkable and something to be very proud of.
Well, I know, and I feel like I get the luckiest to be alive during a time when there's Arwen here, and it's just I'm
You're
serious.
so sweet.
I think about that, like how many times I've looked at the people in my life, and I think, man, I could have been alive any other time, but I get this one, and I get to meet cool people like
Aw,
you, and you just do just powerful things, and I just really
thank
adore
you.
you. So
Thank you
appreciate you
as
being
well.
guest number one.
Thank you for having
Of
me.
course, of
Happy
course,
New
of course.
Year.
Happy New Year to you. And we'll make certain we get this out to everybody. But I just adore you. Please know that.
I and I as well. All right, my dear.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care of yourself.
You too.
Bye
Bye.
now.